I know, we did that on purpose, right?
Do you spell it right?
This is the, yeah, she does. She does. That's what I always say.
Red light's already on.
I don't think it's on. Hey, how you doing?
How are you doing?
Good.
How are you holding up? Good to see you.
How's everybody doing?
Pretty well, yeah. Got one graduated.
I was gonna ask, it's gotta be close.
Yeah. So it's a funny thing because our oldest decided to graduate early, and I was like, no, don't do that. You know, enjoy your last semester of college.
Sure.
And then moved and got a job, and that was February 20th before COVID hit. So you'd probably still be living in our basement if they didn't
Absolutely.
do that.
You're right.
So it was one time, you know, when going against the advice worked out pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that was good. So she's out in Berkeley, and then the middle kid's at home.
Yeah, right?
It's our last one.
I knew that. Time flies. I got one in college now too. I still can't believe that.
Well, I'm kind of worried about next year because we'll have two in college. So it's going to be a lot of spaghetti.
We can share
without-
horror stories.
Yeah, that's right. It'll be a lot of spaghetti with no meat sauce, right?
You're exactly right.
That's okay. I could use the skip a meal down
I
there.
definitely could use it.
Well, yeah, that too.
Yeah, we're definitely, we're gonna be on that train for a while with two in college. That's gonna be interesting, so. We'll see. We'll make it
We'll
work.
have 2 years of that, or at least 2.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can manage the 4 years.
It's hard to get out.
Great results again last weekend.
Yeah, that's right.
Especially with STEM majors.
Yeah, and kids who had the pandemic year and a half doesn't help.
We were at school last year. They had a pretty normal, all things considered normal year. So he set me he got the full credits and most of his classes were in person. So that was good.
The policy.
Painful at times. He got quarantined twice, but
Oh.
they made it, you know.
Yeah. Well, we've got a lot of grateful students now that things are better.
But still haven't, I don't see them going around town much still though. You know, they kind of.
No, and I'm just as happy about that myself, you know, because our vaccination rate for students is 99.5%.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
I don't know what the count is, but it's 50%.
Okay.
We'll probably
Oh,
get
it's
yeah. Licking County is like,
Oh, yeah. They can do it credit, 50,
yeah.
give or take. So.
Just as glad if they stay with other mostly safe kids.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yep.
Because you want to keep them in school. You guys want to keep them We've had a couple other ones at middle school, that's about it.
That counts students, faculty, and staff. That's, between students, faculty, and staff, we're solid 3,000.
Yeah.
So that's close to 0 on the scale of the other measure. 3 people a week is 1 in 1,000. So it's a little bit. We'll take it.
Especially given some adults aren't the best decision makers. Uh-huh. Do whatever you want, then.
Good to see you.
Hey, good to see you. Sure.
And I have to go over stuff. Do that. I'm done. Thank you.
I can do it on the way out. I can help out. You know, I can get some stuff delivered.
It's just that.
I know, you want to do it too.
Yeah, we might.
Well, then somebody can sit on. Just here, separate time.
I did, I ordered it.
Time. What's that one, Chair? Somebody can sit on. Separate time.
No, I don't think so.
I think they're figuring out that.
You're good.
So he's gonna pick it up. Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad. I just did her spot. She said me.
I know. Yeah. That's right. You can talk, it's okay. Just waiting on the board. Be here momentarily.
That's a big one. Did not answer it.
Y'all would stop texting me, I would have.
Sorry, I'm late, sorry. Please join me for the pledge. Oh, welcome everybody tonight. Good to see a good crowd. Please join me for the pledge of allegiance. The pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Take roll, please. Dr. Foreman. Here. Mr. Miller.
Here.
Ms. Deeds. Here. Mr. Wolf.
Here.
Ms. Shaw. Here. Okay. I have a motion to approve the agenda. So moved.
Second.
Take roll, please. Ms. Shaw. Aye. Mr. Wolf.
Aye.
Ms. Deeds. Aye. Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Dr. Foreman. Aye. Nomination.
All right, good evening. Tonight we have the pleasure of commending our National Merit Scholarship Recognition students. 3 Granville High School students will be commended for their being semifinalists, applying for final status, and 4 students will be commended for achieving recognition or commended status by the National Merit Scholarship Program. Each year, more than 1.5 million students across the country enter the National Merit Program by taking the preliminary SAT, National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test, the PSAT, or the NMSQT. Of these students, approximately 50,000 are the top 3% are recognized by the National Merit Scholarship Program. Commended scholars are part of that 3%. Semifinalists are at the 1.5% of that group of 1.5 million. So a tremendous feat to be recognized at that level for their academic prowess. So tonight we have the pleasure of commending Henry Budd, Lily Gibson, Isaac Lowry, Nathaniel Miller as commended students. Those students can come up right now.
I'll take that one for Nate.
Nate, yeah. Zach can take that one. Congratulations. And then our semifinalists are Sophia Minton-Fry, Kyle Neely, and Colvin Timmons. Here and stand, and we're going to take a picture. Ryan, do you have that?
Yep, I got it.
Okay. And it gives your parents a photo opportunity to get your stuff on
Let's take
Facebook.
Alexis.
Come on up.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. All right, thank you. Stay there, look.
Yep. Let your parents know. Excellent. Congratulations. And you're probably all happy that you did. So if you have studying to do or you need to do at this point, that concludes our commendation for tonight. Rick, do you want me to turn off the light?
So the first slide here shows our cash balance compared to last year. And you can see that we're kind of on the downward trajectory for this time of year that is typical. We have a cyclical pattern based on when our property tax revenue payments come in. So compared to September of last year, we're at 5.6 million, higher than last year. And that is due to the phasing of the income tax and then that carryover cash balance from prior year. Looking at revenue for the month of September compared to last September, local tax revenue is down, and that's just a timing issue of when our rollback and homestead payments are made from the state. So that will be made next month. On state revenue, just wanted to provide a quick update there. So we were supposed to have our monthly or our semi-monthly payments updated with the new funding formula starting in October. ODE has come out and said that's not going to start now until December. It's just taking them longer to program their accounting system with the new formula so that those payments will be updated for us in December. But just wanted to say that we are starting to work on the 5-year forecast and have those conversations. And so under the new formula, it is, once we're digging into the details of how that all works with our data, it is looking like we will end up seeing a slight increase this year, specifically due to the transportation component. So I just wanted to mention that although that line item is down for this month, in total, that will be made up once those payments are updated in December. Then on revenue year to date, local tax revenue is up, and that's the phase-in of the income tax. And then on all other revenue, we'll continue to see that be up over prior year, which is the return of advance for the ESSER grant funds. On the expenditure side, salary and benefits are up over last September. That's salary base increases that we'll see each month, but also the SERS surcharge, the timing of when that was paid, as well as a severance payment, which is a payment for unused sick days for a retiree, so that was an outlier over prior year. On purchase service, we're seeing an increase in utilities, and then some one-time payments. For example, our Power School implementation invoice was paid this month, so that's a one-time outlier as well. And then on supplies, that always kind of varies from month to month, but fuel costs and the transportation line item is up over prior year. So looking at expenditures year to date then, salary and benefits will continue to be off due to the double insurance payment in last July, again associated with our software conversion. And then the other two line items are up slightly over prior year, and those are all for the same reasons previously mentioned. So after adjusting for those significant items, so the insurance payment, as well as no longer paying tuition for scholarship, community schools, and open enrollment, expenditures are up about $410,000 over prior year, which is reasonable and where we would expect it to be. So our COVID-related funds, we have completely expended now our ESSER 1 as well as the coronavirus relief funds. So we have ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 that we'll continue spending. So we have until 2023 and 2024 to spend those funds. And how we are spending them is shown on this graph here. So a lot of the ESSER 3 funds are falling into the facilities and improvement category, which we actually have an agenda item on later that we'll talk about. And then there's also the component required set aside for credit recovery summer intervention. So a large portion is being spent on that as well. And then that's just the detailed breakdown for you to review at your leisure. It's the same information previously reported. Okay, then I wanted to add an athletic complex update this month. So the project, as you know, is completely expended and we have finished paying on it. But I want to bring it up quarterly or whenever we receive a payment from the boosters, so that we're continuing to monitor that receivable balance for the amount that we advanced for the private portion, so that they could, so that they wouldn't have to take out a loan to pay for their portion, so we could save that interest expense. So this shows the breakdown. The top line on each section, the public and private portion, shows what the actual costs ended up being for each portion. And I wanted to emphasize that we did come in under budget. So we had contingency that went unspent, and we also came in on time, which of course helps to control the costs as well. So those are the two lines highlighted in gray. And then underneath it is kind of where the revenue came from to pay for that portion. So the public portion, we had board approved transfers that we made to the project fund. So then there's a remaining balance there that will stay there for maintenance of that facility as needed, so that we won't have to transfer at a later date. We'll just keep that remaining balance there for maintenance costs. And then on the private side, we have some initial donations that were made up front, and then the advance that the board also approved in 2020. And then there are kind of payments that they make as they receive significant donations. They come in and cut a check to us, which reduces that receivable balance. So the remaining balance outstanding there is $722,000. So they are on track for repaying that in the time period that they had pledged.
And the overall expenses aren't going to change at all this point.
Correct,
It goes
yep.
up in, and the overall split between public and private being roughly half and half is
Yeah.
going to continue to be the same, but we'll kind of receive changes in the bottom half of that as private donations come back in.
Yes, exactly. Yep, the project is almost 50-50 split on the public and private portion of the expenses. And then, yeah, we'll just adjust that balance as those payments come in.
What's the timeframe on this?
So the individuals pledged over 4 or 5 years. The large donor that we have 2 or 3, well, in January we'll receive our second payment. So really it's like 3 more years that will have large influx coming to pay off that balance. Any other questions on the athletic complex update? Okay, and then just our cash reconciliation for the month, and that is it. Oh, yep.
Really great to see the stadium used so much these days. You know, last year there were some constraints and things like that, but now it's really in full swing, and every night there's something going on there. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, it's so nice to
We
be
even
here.
hosted our homecoming dance out in the stadium.
Yeah.
That was the first.
Yeah.
The kids loved it.
Yeah.
Now they had great weather, which was fantastic and unpredictable, you know. But it really was a great opportunity for the stadium to be used in a completely different and unique way.
Great job with the weather, Mr. Brown.
I just have a quick question when you talked about utilities.
Yes.
Is that something, you said they're up, is that something you anticipate continuing?
Yeah, it sounds like electric costs are going up, so we are part of a consortium that locks in rates on electric and gas. But I think usage is probably up with more people just being in the buildings, kind of getting back into full use of our buildings and things like that. But it does sound like rates are probably going to continue going up. That's just kind of the market that we're in right now.
Okay, and this was, yeah, I mean, this would be compared from last year, not necessarily
Right.
from years prior. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
It might be interesting to see like year prior as well, and things
Yeah.
like busing. I mean, you know, our fuel costs were half as much last year because we ran half as many routes basically and so forth. So take it with a grain of salt because you're comparing to something that's not normal, which
Yes.
last year was.
So that's
I'm
been
not
the
sure.
challenge with the forecast,
Right.
that we'll definitely talk about next month, but we're really having to go back to 2019 to find a comparable year to what we're probably going to experience this year. But then of course you have to add inflation and just supply chain issues that are causing prices to go up, so it's challenging, but yeah, we are looking at definitely a multi-year history to come up with projections for the future.
Great,
Yeah.
thanks.
I also really appreciate that the facilities improvement was such a big part of how those ESSER funds, those federal, all those relief funds were used, because it just seems like something that's going to be sustainable, not like a one-time, here's your plastic gloves and let's move on, you know what I mean?
Yes, yes, yep.
to start by just giving you a general update, general status report of what's going on in the schools right now related to COVID. So our current status has not changed since the last board meeting. We are currently still K-6 mask mandate and 7-12 mask optional. Our numbers currently have gone down since the last meeting that we had. Remember, we were spiking cases in several different areas within several different buildings. Right now, we have 8 active cases. The majority of them are at the elementary level and specifically at the K-3 building. So we have 6 at the elementary, 0 at GIS, which we remember in the last month's meeting we had the major caseload at GIS, 1 at GMS and 1 at GHS. We have about 26 kids in quarantine, but that is quarantine from in-school and out-of-school related cases. So in a lot of circumstances, of the 8 or 6 at GES, many of them were already in quarantine because it was a family member that was sick, and then they just got sick down the road. So again, we're seeing a lot of family cases that, the good news is the quarantining process outside of school is working, and those kids aren't contact tracing for kids in schools because they've been out for a while. We did hold a vaccine clinic for the 3rd shot booster for the eligible staff members that wanted it. It was optional. The Lincoln County Health Department held that last Thursday, and we had about roughly 143 staff members take advantage of that. But many reported that they were able to get the vaccine through another source, CVS, Walgreens, any other provider in the area. We do know that Pfizer has submitted for approval for emergency use of the vaccine for students age 5 through 11. We are hearing indications that that will be approved potentially as early next week. So that's something that we're tracking to see how that impacts us. In general, we are in a better place than we were at the start of the school year. I think that's true not only in Granville, but it's starting to be true in Lincoln County. We're starting to see numbers coming down in Lincoln County as well. We anticipated that we would come down off of that wave a little bit, and we're starting to see that. So that's COVID. Now I'm going to push that aside and talk a little bit about academics. So last Friday, the state of Ohio did release their local report card. It does not look anything like it used to. There are no grades associated with anything. It really is just data not reported, not graded. And there was legislation that was passed that moved away from the A to F system to a 5-star rating system. So this is going to kind of be a brief update. We can get granular if you want in certain areas, but we don't have a lot of specificity like we usually have with the local report card.
So is that due to the circumstances from last year, or is that just where we're headed?
No, that's circumstances from last year because, as you know, the General Assembly passed legislation as the last year, not necessarily counting as a report card year.
Yeah.
Tests weren't mandated, those types of situations because of COVID.
So we're not going to get that level of granular detail that we usually have in the past?
Correct, correct. But you're going to see some data here. And what I will share is positive. So you're used to seeing performance index. That's in the achievement category, and it's basically how many kids score each level of proficiency. So from limited basic to proficient accelerated, advanced, and advanced plus. Our performance index was 102.1. That is actually #1 in Central Ohio. So you may have seen that in the Newark Advocate, but that is #1 in Central Ohio. So again, we are used to seeing performance indexes up around 110, 109, but again, it's being calculated slightly differently, and it's still lower, but at the top of the Central Ohio districts. Again, within achievement, we look at state indicators met across the different testing categories. So we have anywhere from third grade to high school, all the different courses that our students take. That percent proficiency and state standard column are pretty much the ones that we tend to look at most. And as you can see, almost all the performance and proficiency indicators have met the state standard except for a couple. I'll call out 7th grade mathematics because most people look at that and go, wait a second, why is that number so much different than everyone else? Most of our 7th graders move to advanced levels of mathematics within 7th grade, so many of them take 8th grade. So if you look at the N size of 7th grade mathematics, it's 93 students versus 8th grade mathematics is up around 219. So a lot of students take the 8th grade assessment because they're taking an advanced level course. Again, you're seeing very high performance levels. Those performance levels or proficiency rates also contribute to, obviously the performance index. So again, considering a COVID year, things look relatively consistent with previous performance years. So we're pretty pleased with that. And, we do look at the third grade indicator. Obviously, if there was a population of students that were gonna not necessarily perform as well, it was going to be students at the earlier grades within literacy, because literacy is such an intimate process, and not having that potential in-person or a remote type of environment where they're learning literacy is a little bit more of a challenge. And I think we saw that across the board in the state of Ohio. Progress is related to value-added measures. So how much did each individual student grow? Remember, green is above typical growth, yellow is meeting typical growth, and orange is slightly below typical growth. And typical growth is in a year segment. So a typical year's growth is 1 year for a seat in the school. So you can see a lot of green up there, so significantly above average growth. Again, we see 7th grade mathematics, it's a little bit of a different color. Again, I explained that based on the previous slide in the achievement category as well. But again, looking at achievement and progress gives you a better picture, or more complete picture of student performance. We are required by law to look at subgroup populations to see how they're doing. So we look at ELA and mathematics, all students, and then different subgroup populations, American Indian, Asian, Black, Hispanic, multiracial, white, economically disadvantaged, English language learners, and students with disabilities. All of those categories are stipulated within Ohio Revised Code and on the local report card from Ohio Department of Education. You can see that all those areas, their performance index, put them above their goal, and we received the 100 points possible that we were able to receive for that subgroup analysis. Again, this is one of the ways that we look at equity. We talk about diversity, equity, inclusion. One of the things that we look at is how do students perform in different subgroup populations. Again, it's data, it doesn't provide any answers, it provides more questions. But it is something that we pay attention to as part of our continuous improvement mentality. Mathematics, you can see again, we received the total possible points of 100. All of the performance indicators were met. If you don't have enough students within a specific category, it's not calculated because it could be a FERPA issue. So again, good information on gap closing as well. Graduation rates, we have a 4-year and a 5-year cohort. Our 4-year cohort was 99.6, and our 5-year cohort was 100%. So again, the grade no longer matters. It's not reported this year. In the future, that is going to be some type of 5-star rating. And we'll talk about that when we fully understand all the changes that are going to occur in the rating process. But I at least wanted to get that in front of you to give you a little context of what data we did have from last year and what we do internally to kind of look at that information to see what we need to do this year in order to serve our students. Prepared for success is the last category. How prepared was your 2020 graduating class? Am I already on time, Amy? That's my job. I'm the timekeeper. No, that's great. Thank you. So, Prepared for Success looks at ACT participation and remediation free, SAT, honors diploma, industry recognized credentials, advanced placement. You can see the number of students taking advanced placement participation is relatively high. That's an area that we tend to do very well in, as well as ACT remediation and participation, dual enrollment. And then we do not have International Baccalaureate or IE, so we don't have the bottom two categories. But again, all those go into a calculation to determine, are students prepared for success? I've actually talked a lot about this in the negative because honestly, test results aren't necessarily a great indicator of success in life. There are some things out there that I think provide indications of success, but I would also suggest that our portrait of a graduate and those competencies that students have in collaboration, adaptability, empathy, resiliency, critical thinking, all of those categories are not represented necessarily explicitly up here, but are things that I think add value to a student's experience and definitely help them thrive in the world outside of Granville schools. So again, good news from a prepared for success standpoint, and that's all that we have as far as state level data at this time, but it is an indication. Now, I shared that we tend to value a lot of the portrait of a graduate competencies as well as the academic performance. We release our quality profile every single year. Our quality profile takes things out of the numerical perspective and puts a little bit more of a narrative on some of the things that students experience and did to demonstrate those competencies. Mr. Burnett and I and the leadership team and the teachers have been working on collecting that information. And I'd say by the end of November, end of November, you'll see the quality profile being released. In a new format that was designed by the CTEC Design CAD and Design class. Visual Arts and Design, is that the class, Mr. Burnett? Yes. So they designed the whole thing. So three students did a fantastic job. It looks amazing. And they did the outline and all the graphic work. So good work for those students. Any questions about anything on the local report card or general update?
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Which do you want first? Do you want general update or do you want?
General update.
Okay, so my question has to do with subs.
500.
That'd be great. So yeah, my question has to do with subs and whether subs, you have been able to get more since the mask mandate, or if it's really just an employment issue that everyone's facing throughout many industries.
Yeah, so we are seeing the issue of having employees available across all sectors. So bus drivers, custodians, subs. We have seen a slight uptick in subs available. Whether they take the jobs is another thing. There is also some more flexibility that's being granted through legislation that was just recently signed, that we can lessen the criteria for a person who can earn a sub license and then they can work in the schools. Everybody's struggling to find people right now. Yeah. So it's really both.
Okay, all right. And then my second question has to do with, so when we see some of those students who are just below or a little bit below some of those like baseline, I guess, or whatever you think about the 3rd grade language arts, 7th grade mathematics, And then I saw, you know, we have the funds that we use to do some, I don't know if the term is remediation, but some work with students during the
Intervention,
summer.
yeah.
Is that something that was offered last summer for students?
Yes, absolutely. So we typically offer some type of summer remediation or intervention and enrichment for students. We doubled that last year, knowing that we were going to have additional funds available and there was a set aside required for those services. And we felt like when we looked at our own internal data, not just state data, where students were struggling was at the lower levels within literacy. And so Mr. Burnett did a fantastic, and Mr. Morris did a fantastic job identifying students that would benefit from that intervention and providing that service. And then our teachers did a fantastic job of, providing that intervention over the summer.
And then if families need that service, is that something they can contact their teacher about? Is it generally something where the teacher identifies or the principal lets
Yeah,
the parent
I
know?
think if the teacher isn't having that conversation with parents and the parents are concerned, definitely bring it to the teacher's attention and have that conversation.
Thank you.
Other questions?
That's great. It's always good to see fantastic results like that and so forth. I don't know that it really tells us anything we didn't know before, right? And I agree with you, it's not like the most important stuff, the things that come in the quality profile and the extracurriculars and athletics, add all to the academics and things like that. So that would be good to see that. And I think also it seems like we had a lot of internal data last year coming out of the year. We didn't have to wait for this to kind of tell us the barometer of what was happening, and that really helped us with the summer as well as gearing this year. And having all the students back in school this year has been fantastic. So I'm hopeful that we'll continue to see these kind of results. So,
And I think it's always important to, as Cecile just referenced, we just came off of conferences. Many of those conferences were done via Zoom to everyone's delight. But those conversations are absolutely critical in getting the information that we need to form that partnership and to provide the right services to our students. So, take advantage of those opportunities to interact with the staff and the staff share how they're seeing their students performing in the schools. And it's not just about academics, it's about the whole child.
I mean, those conversations are more important than these numbers for individuals.
Correct.
Because these are all last year's numbers and students have moved on. So, the teacher conferences and the testing we do throughout the year is actually more important because that's what affects students immediately.
Absolutely. Anything else?
Yes.
Okay.
This is a surprise question, sorry. I mean,
Okay.
the others were not planned either, but we talked about them. But I was just thinking, it just kind of popped in my head as we were talking parent-teacher conferences, and that can be tiring. How do you feel for staff? How do you feel morale is in the buildings?
So I think, to be completely honest, we were all throughout the summer preparing for things to be much more normal than they are. Okay, so they're sad. they're struggling with the fact that there's a mask mandate. It's challenging for teachers to teach the way that they teach in an animated, engaging, motivating way with a mask on. So it's a challenge. And so I think morale is probably like it is in many other sectors. It's not necessarily high. But I think our teachers love what they do. They love the opportunities that they get to create and cultivate with their students. And they're going to deliver the type of results and the type of experience that Granville parents are expecting. But it's a little different, but they're getting adjusted to the new, way of doing things for right now. We are, we always say we're nimble. Sometimes we're tired of being nimble.
Yeah.
We want to just have some normalcy, so.
And the same is true with the students from my perspective.
Yes.
And things like that. And the same is true with our community. Like, there's a lot of frustration that's going around about all kinds of things and so forth. And I think the only thing we do is just keep doing what we do best. Within the constraints that we have. We have awesome teachers teaching kids that are well supported by the community and their families and things. And I think if we just keep doing what we've always done best, we'll continue to have results that are stellar compared to any place else.
Absolutely.
That's hard.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, thank you. That concludes my report.
We have reached the part of our agenda where we will entertain public comments. If you would like to address the board, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and you can speak for up to 3 minutes.
My name is Jim Hunnis. I live at 211 Wicklow Drive in Granville, and I'm a member of the Granville High School class of 78, and I ran track and cross country in high school. So thus you see this double-sided page recognizing that 50 years ago, on October 16, 1971, Granville High School boys won their first league title. And this last Saturday, also October 16th, they won their 18th league title with 17 league runner-up. The girls, 40 years ago, won their first league title on October 13th, 1981. And this last Saturday, they won their 20th league title. So those are a couple of articles that appeared in the Advocate at the time. And the other 2 pages I gave you were just kind of a snapshot picture of the cross-country history. And in the first column, well, that's the first column, 1, 2, 3. 5th column, you see where you end up with the league, where they placed over the years. And of course, this is through last year, so it doesn't include what happened this last Saturday. I was pleased to see that Tyler Otterstadt was elected to the Granville High School Athletic Hall of Fame. He joined 6 other cross-country runners included in the Hall of Fame: John Hammond, Jim Alexander, Eric Koenig. What's Katie's little sister's name? Kinsella. Nancy Kinsella, Susan Stukas, and Annie Beecham. Cross-country has existed for 55 years, and it's nice that we've gotten up to actually having 7 runners, which would make a team. So I look forward to maybe Michaela DeGennaro. She should be a shoe. And then anybody else that can be elected. I think that's about 3 minutes.
Thank you.
We always appreciate these annual visits to the board to give us the history of cross-country. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to address the board? No? Okay, so we will move on. We don't have anything specific slotted for board discussion. Were there any other additional thoughts or comments about the update or financial reports or anything else that you're hearing in particular going on?
I know the girls cross-country team, I can't speak for the boys, but I just hear it's a really great group to be a part of and that everyone's really supportive of each other. So it's exciting to also see how successful they are.
Even just this last weekend, we swept the races and things like that with some outstanding results. And I think it's, like you said, the culture, right? And we've had a couple of kids come to the program. And it's just amazing how much they come together for each other, right? And I think that's just a real tribute. And in a sport that can sometimes be perceived as an individual effort, the fact that you get all the guys and the girls supporting each other in the varsity and the junior varsity. Our JV teams are scoring perfect scores where all of the Granville runners come in before all of the other runners from all of the other schools. And it's because the varsity runners are there cheering them on, right? And mentoring them and helping them out and things like that. And I think that culture is not unique just to cross country. I think that's the culture that we need in our academics, and that's the culture that we need to be pervasive in all of our extracurriculars in our schools, because that's what drives success. So, yeah, thanks for the reminder, Jay.
Any other
reference that, you know, we'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and the Chamber of Commerce for putting on the forum for the board candidates. I thought that was an excellent opportunity for the community of Granville to get to know the candidates. So,
Very well done.
yep.
Very informative too, I thought.
All right, we'll move on to the action agenda.
Okay. Action item 10.01 is board policy adoption. So moved.
Second.
Okay, so these were discussed at the last meeting, and I would say almost all of them are a byproduct of some type of legislation change or federal policy change. So as you know, OSBA makes recommended policy changes, and we adopt them 3 or 4 times a year. And this is the list from the summer legislation.
Questions or comments? All right, take the roll, please.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds? Ms. Shaw?
Aye.
Dr. Foreman?
Aye.
Okay, the next 2 items I might need Brittany's help in describing, but we have an agreement for Spectre contract flooring.
So moved.
Second.
And so this is ratifying an agreement that is for replacement of flooring in our different buildings. And part of the recommendations from the CDC and AAP was to remove carpet from classrooms to increase or limit the number of allergens in the environment. So we went to a hard plank floor in a lot of our classrooms and used some of the funding that Brittany referred to in the monthly financial. So this is a retroactive contract for procuring that state contract.
And this has been something it's been ongoing for years, and it's a great change to be able to make that I think makes the classrooms really functional in a lot of ways and so forth, and it's something we would have done already, but it's nice to be able to accelerate with funds that were given to us anyway to keep that up, so it's great to see this continuing.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? Take the roll, please.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw? Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Dr. Foreman?
Aye.
Thank you. Next item, 10.03, is an agreement with Superior Building Services, which is our provider for HVAC.
So moved.
Second.
So this was a big expenditure. One of the things that we tried to do was upgrade ventilation and our HVAC system. So the contract, I believe, was close to $270,000 for replacement of HVAC units. When we went to Superior and said, how many times are we replacing air within a specific classroom, we were changing air 4 times within a class period. So think about that. That's a lot of intake and output. So, but it was, I think, important for us to do as part of our safety protocols. So, and there were items on our list of facility enhancements that were already on track to get taken care of. Anything else, Bruce? Okay.
And like Ms. Shaw mentioned, it's not just a one-time expense, it's a permanent investment in our schools, and it's great to be able to direct things to resources in our operations group that's going to be lasting.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Take the roll, please.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw?
Aye.
Dr. Foreman?
Aye.
Next item is 10.04, approval of the purchase of a school bus.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, several years ago, we were involved in doing lease purchase agreements because we did not have a lot of money in our permanent improvement fund. So if we didn't have cash on hand, we went through the lease purchase process. We're in a better position now to do outright purchasing, save the district the money on the interest. So we'll be buying probably a school bus every single year. There might be a year where we have to double up, but we are on a consistent plan to replace buses annually.
So this is replacement, not adding a new.
Okay.
usually when one comes into service, another one exits,
How
for
often?
a variety of reasons.
How often do we replace them?
We've been replaced, we've actually been accelerating because there was a period of time for like 7 years that not one bus was purchased, and so we were behind. So there were times where we purchased 3 at a time, but I think 1 bus a year is a better environment.
No, wait, how long does the bus last? Is what-
Oh,
or my question.
depending on the route, it really is mileage.
Oh, okay.
And sometimes, you know, we have a bus that, you know, is low mileage but just doesn't work well. You know, just kind of like how you buy a car the same way. And then we have some buses that go 300, 400,000 or 400,000 miles because of the work of our mechanics.
And is the purchase price still kind of negotiated or monitored through our purchase consortium that we work with on other items as well?
Yeah, so otherwise this would have to be formally bid out, but we work through Meta's bidding process that they do on our behalf to get this pricing.
That's great.
And this is for a new bus, correct?
And it's actually a handicap bus.
Which is more expensive.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Take the roll, please.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw? Aye. Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Ms. Dees? Aye. Dr. Foreman?
Aye. Consent agenda?
Seek approval for 11.01A through C.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have our typical items for consent agenda. I would call your attention to 2 items. We have the resignation of Jody Schaefer, who is an elementary educational aide effective December 31st. Jody served our community for many years and done a fantastic job with our students. So we recognize and appreciate her level of service to the Granville community. And then we have a retirement. Beth Wade plans on retiring at the end of the year. Beth is one of our occupational therapists and does a fantastic job, and we're going to miss her if we have her throughout the rest of this year. But I just wanted to recognize those 2 things.
Any questions or comments about the consent agenda?
Sorry to see great staff leave and things like that, but with our thanks and appreciation, also it's really nice to have a heads up on it. So we have some time to make some good plans and think about the appropriate staffing and recruit the right individuals. So thanks to them for that as well.
Anything else? Take the roll, please.
Ms. Dees? Aye. Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw? Aye. Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Dr. Foreman?
Aye. Finances?
Item 12.01, approval of the September 2021 financial report. So moved.
Second.
Any additional questions or comments on the financial report?
Take the roll.
Ms. Shaw? Aye. Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Ms. Dees? Aye. Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Foreman?
Aye.
Item 12.02, approval of the permanent appropriation resolution for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021.
So moved.
Second. Thank you.
We are adjusting the appropriation for the permanent improvement fund to account for that bus purchase. Since we were doing leases before, we had it budgeted for July, which falls in the next fiscal year, so we're just moving that up. And then cleaning up some of the grant funds with carryover dollars that we've received, as well as ESSER IDAB funds that will be added to the ESSER reports next month.
Questions or comments? Take the roll, please.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw? Aye. Ms. Dees?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Dr. Foreman?
Aye. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments?
No, I'd just like to thank everyone because we do have National Honor Society tonight at the high school, which is why we had to move this up so that some of the staff could be there. So, thank you.
Take the roll.
Ms. Dees? Aye. Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw? Aye. Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Foreman?
Aye. The adjourn.
this. Charge for when I get home.